So while we wait for these things, let's move into offseason previews. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Bryce, the Cleveland Cavaliers have an interesting offseason ahead of them. Donovan Mitchell has 2 years, $72 million left on his deal, player option for that 2025-26 season. He is the fulcrum across everything that the Cleveland Cavaliers offseason centers around. Darius Garland, 4 years, $163 million. Evan Mobley, 1 year, $11 million. He is extension eligible this summer. Jared Allen, 2 years, $40 million. And then they have Max Strus locked in long-term. Karis LeVert for 1 more year. Dean Wade for 2 more years if they want. George Niang for 2 more years. Sam Merrill and Ty Jerome each for 1 more year. They have the number 20 overall pick in this draft. Let's start here.
Okay.
Donovan Mitchell can sign a 4-year, $209 million extension next year. Do you think he should sign that extension?
What is it?
4 years, $209 million. So he would decline his player option for next year at $37 million or so, and would be immediately locked into 53 million next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I guess would be my answer. Because what can he? Is he giving up money? I guess if he what's the play to get the bigger? Is there a play to get a bigger contract? Because I'm not worried about him locking in with Cleveland, because these guys can get traded whenever they want to. So
yes,
the only reason I would say no is if there's a different play to get a 5-year, where he's making $60 million a year, or if there's a play to waiting until the new cap comes in and getting more money that way.
So the move for him, in my opinion, would be to sign a 2+1 extension. So do the max number at 2+1. So reduce this by 60 million or something like that. So do the number 3 years, 145 or whatever, 160 million, whatever the fuck the number is. I don't know. Do a 2+1. You have next year, which would be his 8th year. The 2 years after that would be 9 and 10. 10 years gets him to the 35% number.
Yeah,
if he's still good enough to be that good. I think there's a question as to whether or not I would just rather lock in for the 4th year at 70 million or 65 or whatever the hell number is. But my guess is that he will probably just do the 2+1.
Okay.
If he signs.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. If there's a 2+1 to get back into the market and then get another contract with a bigger cap and all of that, I get it. I think at his age and all of that, he is 28. I think there is an argument to just taking the 4 years and that guaranteed $200 million. But if I'm Donovan Mitchell, I don't have any qualms about going ahead and re-upping with the Cavs, because again, I think these guys can get moved to the team they want to get to if he's not happy there. And to just go ahead and answer, I think the Cavs should absolutely prioritize him. Get this done, get him locked in. If he says he wants Darius Garland traded, then okay, we'll make that move this offseason. I thought Donovan Mitchell was really good. And when he was healthy in the playoffs, I thought he was awesome.
That's the other piece of this with Mitchell in terms of doing 4 versus a 2+1 is, in 5 years, or no, it'd be in 3 years, I guess. In 3 years, Donovan Mitchell will still be almost 31 years old. So it's a big bet that he will still be ready to go.
Yes.
And still be full scale, max player. My guess is that he signs that deal instead, because the cap will keep jumping and jumping and jumping to a level to where even if he's not a max guy, there's probably a world where he's able to still get in the ballpark of what these last 2 years would be.
Sure.
Really last 1 year, because he'd still have the 1 player option if he needs it. I think the 2+1 makes more sense, and I probably would sign it if I was him. I would lock in and make sure I have $150 million, whatever the hell the number is, $145 million coming my way for the next, however many years, 3 years at least. Lock that in. And then if you want to get moved, get moved. Let the Cavs work this summer to make a roster that fits better around you and go from there.
Yep, I agree.
The next question for them, if this is the route they're going down. So there have been a lot of rumors about Darius Garland, right?
Yeah.
Darius Garland, where is the best fit for him? And how do you value him on the marketplace at 4 years, $163 million left?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I really like Garland. I'm trying not to overweigh the playoffs where he struggled a little bit, to be quite honest. Average just under 16 points a game on 43% from the field, 35% from three, didn't get to the free throw line a lot. And in general, his year was a little bit down. So if I was Cleveland and I was going to move Garland, or if I was Garland and Cleveland was going to move me, the very first team I would call if I was his representation is San Antonio. I would try to get him to San Antonio and be that backcourt guy that we've talked about San Antonio needing down there. If it's not there, I would look at Brooklyn. We've talked about Brooklyn needing kind of like an on-ball juice guy. And then if you were willing to stomach it, I think the Wizards would be another team that I think they need a ball handling backcourt player. And I think that could be interesting because they have those wings forwards that I feel like could be interesting to the Cavaliers in return. One other team, maybe I feel like I've seen the Pelicans thrown out there. Yeah. And could you put something around, what if it's like a Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland that starts with Brandon Ingram plus in return?
I think if I was a team acquiring Darius Garland, I would need to have my star in place already.
That's fair. Sure.
Like, I don't love him in Brooklyn. I don't love him in Washington because to me, then you have like $70 million in Darius Garland and Jordan Poole. And I think that Poole deal is going to be very difficult to move.
Sure.
So like maybe the Cavs, if the Cavs are taking the Poole deal, like that is a crazy value add that they would need to like throw on top of this. If you're Washington in this circumstance, so like, I don't even know that like totally lines up for me. Also, like no positional size, like doesn't really fit that front office's archetype of player. Brooklyn, I can see trying to get involved because I don't know what the fuck Brooklyn's plan is, but like the two spots that do make sense to me are San Antonio and New Orleans. New Orleans would be just like a 1-for-1. Can you do Brandon Ingram for Darius Garland kind of thing? Is that a move that Cleveland would like? Is that a move that the Pelicans would like? I think the Pelicans, it's an interesting fit next to Zion because of the on-ball gravity and the off-ball like shooting ability that Garland has. I kind of dig that a little bit.
I feel like that's a good return for BI too. We've talked about this with Brandon Ingram with some other teams, and they're not getting any draft capital, but I think for a team like New Orleans, maybe that's not something you need in return. And BI's value is a little bit lower because the contract he's about to get and demand a year from now.
So here's kind of this is also like a big question for me. Like you kind of brought up what Darius Garland is, and like I want to give him a lot of leeway because he had the broken jaw this year, and like that thing just like fucks with you. You know what I mean? Like that's a really, like, to me, what he was this year is not like what he is. Right.
I would agree. I think it's more than fair.
I think he's probably like a 21-8 point guard, like he was the previous 2 years. Can really pass the ball, turns it over a bit more than you would like. Really good ball handler, can play both on and off the ball. Buzzy, jittery, fast, can get up and down in transition. Can also play in half court settings. I think so. Like Grape Ape brings up, I'm not doing that 1-for-1 if I'm Cleveland. I don't know how excited teams are going to be to take on 4 years, 160 million of Darius Garland when he's never played 70 games in a season and is coming off of like a not awesome year. I'm just like, I'm not saying that he doesn't have value. I think he absolutely does and like would get value in return. I just struggle to pinpoint what the value is. Like if it's San Antonio, is it like one of these 2 lottery picks, Keldon Johnson, and like an interesting young player?
Yeah.
Like is that the thing?
Yeah. I mean, I
Or
think
like,
that's,
or does it require like Devin Vassell to be involved? Like I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's where the one with San Antonio always gets hung up when I talk to people about it, is probably one of the picks. And then it's Keldon. And it seems like Zach Collins gets thrown in a lot. Maybe that's the money
That's
matching money.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, Keldon's cool, but can we get Devin Vassell? And then people talking from the San Antonio side are like, yeah, we don't really want to give up Vassell. And so then that kind of tends to be the breaking point there. And that's the thing with like Cleveland too. I realize they have no draft picks. You know, like theirs are controlled after this year essentially by Utah, either pick swaps or outright. And so, getting some draft capital, young players makes sense. But do you want to trade Darius Garland for draft capital or young players when Donovan Mitchell, like we just talked about, is already 28? Is he going to want to subscribe to the plan of bringing in young players or draft picks, as opposed to, we could talk about whether the fit makes sense of Brandon Ingram, but at least he's an established NBA scorer that, maybe that would excite Donovan Mitchell a little bit more. So I don't know. Like, I don't know which one you would rather want to go with there.
In a vacuum, you would definitely still rather have Garland than Vassell, right?
Yeah, in a vacuum, yes. Yes, sorry, I shouldn't have hesitated. In a vacuum.
I would too. Like I think Devin Vassell's a really good player. I do like the positional size. Like I like that he's like somewhere between 6'5" and 6'6". Has shown like defensive ability previously, but like hasn't been
So
great
that's what I was gonna say
in the NBA.
That would be the caveat there, is I guess depending, because Garland's going to be a negative defensively. It's
right.
how much better is Devin Vassell defensively than Garland? Because I think people will automatically, just because of his size, give him more. But
And he is better.
He is better, but what's the difference?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. Like I think Garland like might be like quite bad defensively, so I do think there is like a fairly substantial difference. But like I don't think Vassell is like a plus either there. I think that like a Garland for Vassell deal, if you really want Garland, and like Vassell and like a little bit more,
would you give
that? Is like a fair centerpiece if I'm Cleveland.
Vassell an 8 or Vassell without 4 or 8?
8 feels like a lot even in this draft with Vassell though. That feels like a lot to me.
Maybe you can get a
I don't know that I would do.
Then.
Yeah, like they have so many future picks. Maybe it's like a future pick.
And for honestly, Sam, for Cleveland, the idea of taking Garland out, plugging Vassell in would be intriguing, right? And we just talked about how they don't have any of their own draft capital moving forward. So a future draft pick may actually be more enticing to them, even
whether maybe it's 35
and a future.
In a future, or you could do maybe like 20. Maybe you could do like Vassell and 20.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Vassell and 8 for 20 and Garland.
8 for 20 and Garland or something like that.
If San Antonio still wants the second first round pick.
Yeah. But like, honestly, like I'm not even excited about that, to be honest. Like I'm really not, if I'm San Antonio. I would probably just rather give up like one of the future picks.
Well, I think if you're San Antonio, the play is how much do we believe in Rob Dillingham, or how much do we believe in Reed Shepherd or Nikola Topic? Because they're going to be able to choose one of those guys. Yeah. Or do we think we can go get Trae Young or DeJounte Murray or somebody like that? So like that's the other caveat here as well, because I think we both think San Antonio should try to build this out because Wemby is ready now, like right now. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And like if you want like a real guard with Wemby, and like we have seen Garland be awesome
We
in
absolutely
pick
have.
and roll partnerships with lob partners with Jared Allen. Man, Garland would be an awesome point guard for Wemby. He'd be really, really good. And you brought up the Pelicans too. Like the Pelicans, I think is an interesting fit as well with Zion. Like you need to find like the CJ answer there.
Sure.
Um,
Not a very good defensive backcourt with those two, but
Not a great defensive backcourt with those two. Uh, I do think San Antonio makes more sense. And like if San Antonio just wants to hang on to Vassell, I totally get it.
sure.
But like maybe Cleveland asks for Keldon Johnson. I think Keldon's like a little bit overrated, to be honest. Like Keldon to me is not quite a good enough centerpiece for Darius Garland, but maybe the Cavs love somebody at number 8.
That's what I think that would be interesting, right? If you're Cleveland, would you rather just take Vassell with a future pick or whatever, or
Yeah.
Keldon because you feel at number 8 is you're gonna get Dalton Connect or somebody that like really fits perfectly into what you want to do, or Cody Williams or whoever, somebody you feel like is really gonna be there that you like.
Yeah, so this is a fair question on San
Yeah,
Antonio. Why shouldn't San
absolutely.
Antonio just draft Rob Dillingham, very similar to Garland? I think that Garland is a much better passer and playmaker for teammates than what Dillingham is. Uh, like I know that Dillingham played well, like off the ball with teammates this year. I think that Garland is like a level above as a passer and playmaker. And if I have Victor as my centerpiece, I would rather have Garland.
Yeah, I mean, and there's different aspects of that, right? If you think Dillingham can be that, you're getting him on a rookie deal, which there's value in that, as opposed to Garland on 4 years, 160.
Totally
But
correct.
but
Yep.
with Garland, you've seen 3 years of NBA tape, not 1 year of Kentucky tape, with Dillingham. So there's a little bit more assurances of who Garland is compared to Dillingham. So I
Here's
get
the other
the
team
idea
that
though.
makes a lot of sense for them as I'm thinking about it is Orlando.
Okay,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Orlando has all of these kids, Anthony Black, Jet Howard that they drafted last year. They have 18 this year. Like, could you find a world that makes sense around that?
What's the return though? Because like, what is Orlando going to give up that isn't kind of in that core? I like the idea because you can insulate him defensively with Jalen Suggs, and
Yes.
Franz is a good defender, and they have some good bigs, like in just that defensive scheme in
Yeah,
general in
and
Orlando.
to be clear, like I would definitely rather have Franz than Darius Garland. I
Yeah, yeah.
understand that Franz is coming off of like a tough playoff series against Cleveland. Like I that's not even a question to me. Like give me the positional size, like skill guy
Oh
ahead
yeah,
of
I
Garland
wasn't
every day of the
considering
week.
him at all in the I would like it less if because I like that he can kind of insulate him.
Yeah, it'd have to be something like John Isaac. Maybe you do this. Maybe it's like Wendell Carter, Anthony Black, and like 18. And then like I guess you'd have to throw Isaac in too to make the money work there. And that's but like Wendell Carter is like an awesome fit next to Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
If you could, well, no, you don't because Orlando has cap space. So you could do like basically Wendell Carter, like Anthony Black in 18.
And that would eat in. That would just eat
Orlando's cap space.
Orlando's cap space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Wendell Carter is like the center you would put next to Evan Mobley,
Because he
right?
spaces the floor.
Because he can space the floor, he can pass a little bit. He's physical to deal with some of those bigger guys as well. Like rebounds well. It's kind of a positional, it's like a perfect positional fit to me.
And if they think Anthony Black can play on the ball some, that helps with some of the second unit ball handling duties that they're going to need even more if you are getting rid of Darius Garland. And that backup point guard's already a question mark. I'm not
And then
saying Black is that guy, but could be.
yeah, and then the other piece of it for Orlando is like, what's the thing we've talked about? Like, we want Paulo and we want Franz like on the ball as much as possible. Let's do that. Like, let's put them on the ball, right? and we have Garland playing off the ball and playing on the ball, certainly at times, it becomes like a real free flowing offense in a way that I think is really creative for them.
And you mentioned it earlier, you want to send Darius to a place that already has its star. Like Paolo is the star with Franz, the 1B or 2, however you feel comfortable with it. I know I kind of got crushed about that 6 months ago, but like Darius he's not the franchise player when he goes there. But and again, what I like about it is based off what I believe Jalen Suggs is in the backcourt, especially defensively, Garland can always guard the fourth best perimeter, like the worst perimeter player that he's not just going to get bullied by. So
that kind of insulates it insulates Mobley, which is like a big thing for Cleveland. It insulates like Darius Garland on defense that's the fit, I think.
I hadn't considered Orlando, but yeah, that's interesting because okay.
Yeah, like you get, a starter in Wendell Carter. You get a really interesting, past top 10 pick in Anthony Black, who we have questions about, but a guy that might fit with Donovan Mitchell, I think, particularly.
Could be. And then good defender in his own right to play next to Donovan.
And then number 20, like that's a pretty good deal to me, I think.
Sure.
And then the next piece of this with Cleveland is I do think they have to break up Mobley and Allen. Where I'm at.
I agree.
I think that they really have to figure out the answer there. I don't know what that answer is. Like Memphis will come up. Obviously, Memphis makes sense for Jared Allen in every way and form, right? I mean, like, what is it? Like Luke Kennard and number 9 for Jared Allen? Like, is that enough?
See, I still and I think the thing with this is then it depends on what you've done with Garland, right? Like if you've already got 18, now you have 18 and 20. Do you need another draft pick in that trade with Jared Allen? So I think that they play off of each other. Allen's interesting. I think he's really good. He's on an awesome contract. You also have some free agent bigs out there also. So it's like, do you need to wait? Is it going to be better to wait to see what teams miss out on? Like, what does Hartenstein do? What does Nick Claxton do? And then you try to gain some leverage over the teams that wanted those guys but missed out on them. And then maybe you can get a little bit more for him. I would want to trade Jarrett Allen for like some real wing depth is what so if I'm trading him to Memphis, I want some of those wings that can come in and play.
So I have a team that can provide the wing depth and a team that has some extension issues forthcoming potentially.
Okay.
Oklahoma City.
Interesting. So
like they have all of these dudes like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. And then like,
oh yeah, we talked about all that extension stuff. Yeah.
You have Ousmane Dieng, who, if I remember correctly, the Cavs like quite liked in that 2022 NBA draft. Josh Giddey is a potential option here as well as a guy that could fit next to Donovan Mitchell in an intriguing way.
Yeah, like if you don't bring in Black, then I think Giddey is definitely somebody that, if you didn't do the Orlando trade, like wipe that off.
Yeah.
Giddey makes some sense there with Cleveland.
So they just have like a lot of options that they could give Cleveland wing depth and like an interesting player there too.
Yeah. No, I think
I don't know that Jared Allen like fits what Oklahoma City's model is becoming.
Sure.
But like I don't think he fits like the 5-out model, and I don't know if they'd want to give up like an insane amount of value for a Jared Allen.
Yeah.
But like I think that he works on that roster in an incredible way.
I feel like amazing. He's a little closer than some of the names we bring up in terms of not just being a complete like he can move, he can catch lobs, he really defends, he'll rebound. So he'll bring some of those things that they need. And I'm going to go back to the well with like, I think Washington really needs a big. So if they don't take one at 2, I think trading him to Washington and Washington, like let's say they take Risa Shea at number 2, like they just fall in love. That's who they want. Then would they be willing to give up Kisper and somebody else for Jarrett Allen? Obviously it'd need to be somebody good, but like some collection of those wings forwards on that roster currently.
Is there like a Kuzma and like draft capital for Jared Allen deal?
So well, like, is Kuzma and Kispert too much?
It's probably about right, I think.
Like,
It's pretty close.
I'm a Kuzma fan, and I think Corey Kispert is really good, and those guys slot into roles and positions that Cleveland would need. So I like that if you're going to move off from this big man duo.
Yeah, I mean, he would be actually like he would help them if they're moving Darius Garland because they
Yep.
need more shot creation in there too.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you'd need to if you're Washington, you'd have to have like an extension agreed upon with Jared Allen at that
Yes,
point, I think,
absolutely.
to
For sure. Yeah.
really consider this. But Washington and Cleveland do actually make like interesting trade partners as well.
Because in Washington, you have your big man now, and you still have Bilal. You still have, like I said, this would assume you draft like Risache, and you still have Denny Avdia. Like, so you still have a good group of young wing forwards there. You have your big man, go find a point guard and start to build this thing out.
And people bring up like in the comments here, I can see like that's weird in year 2 of a Wizards rebuild.
Sure.
Washington's so far away, but the thing with this is like you need to just build defensive infrastructure. They were like unconscionably bad last year on defense. And on top of it, Jared Allen like makes those guards and those wings lives easier with his screening, with his ability to like run dribble handoffs and different kind of sets. Like that's actually like something that would be valuable there.
Here's what I'll say. I will very much admit that I have some bias from watching the Detroit Pistons suck for the last 3 years and not bring in any talent. Like, I literally was on a radio.
Defensive center is so valuable, man.
Sam, I was on a radio spot today, and we were talking about like how we still aren't sure about Cade Cunningham after 3 years. And it was like, it's not even Cade's fault. The team around him is so bad. And listen, if Washington doesn't have a plethora of wing forwards, I wouldn't even suggest this. My point here is I don't think you can play all those guys together anyway. And so I would be willing to give a little bit to go get, in what you said, a defensive big, a lob threat. And he is 26. So if you build this out in 4 years, he's still a valuable member of your roster moving forward. I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm over this rebuilding teams just can't have any good players at all. Like,
Yeah.
I watched it be a complete shit show, and I just don't believe in it anymore. I'm sorry.
I love how you apologize. Like I don't curse like 40 times an episode.
No, here's the thing. One time I dropped an F-bomb and I got called out in the comments because I'm a teacher, and like, actually they're right. Cause my students my students do start turning, they tune into to some of the podcasts. And so I try to be more careful now.
Okay, so the way we've just remade the Cavs, is this good or is this bad?
I don't know.
This is a good question. So it'd basically be Anthony Black, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Kyle Kuzma, Wendell Carter,
Strus.
They would still have Strus. They would figure out whatever they want to do with Okoro. They would have multiple picks coming their way from like these situations.
Corey Kispert.
And Corey Kispert potential, or like, a Kispert or a pick
from
Washington. Yeah. Let's say. Is that team better or worse than what they were this year?
Well, I think here's the thing. It depends on what you believe about the backcourt duo and the front court duo. If you think those things can work, then this is all moot and stupid, and we shouldn't discuss it. Part of this is a little bit of addition by subtraction, as much as I love Jarrett Allen and do like Darius Garland, in that we saw what Donovan Mitchell was, and I think it doesn't work with those two. And I think that your confidence is what you saw from Mobley in the playoffs without Jarrett Allen, and it's going to let him flourish. And then you have these role players, pieces around them that make sense. If you don't believe in that, then we don't do it.
Yeah, it'd be a big bet on Anthony Black, I think, is a guy that like just went in the top 10 last year. It would be a big bet on Wendell Carter not being a significant downgrade from Jarrett Allen because of the way that he and Evan Mobley would fit together potentially, and then getting more out of Evan Mobley potentially that way.
And I think it would be a bet on Kuzma having like this going from a bad team to a good team the way we've seen PJ
Bump.
Washington go from a bad team to a good team in terms of the defensive energy and effort and clutch shooting and those type of things.
Yeah. Or would you just rather do like Brandon Ingram for Darius Garland?
Yeah. That's a big contract though. That's one reason why I like Kuzma is like that contract is really good. Descending.
Unbelievable contract, gives you real flexibility moving forward. And you have, again, it's not just like Kuzma and Wendell Carter for Garland and Allen. It's those two plus Anthony Black, top 10 pick last year, top 20 pick from Orlando this year. And on top of that, like, whatever else you get from Washington, on top of that. So much deeper team.
Yeah.
Like,
I like the flexibility of that.
Much more flexibility in terms of how you build the roster moving forward, I think, as well.
And then eventually if you felt like you had too much depth, which isn't a thing, or you needed a little you could package those guys eventually once you get into the season and see how it fleshes out.
You can easily move 18 and 20 for another good player if you want. Yes, right?
Absolutely. I always feel like a Brandon Ingram hater whenever we get into it's not that. Like, I think Brandon Ingram's really good. It's just there's a big contract coming there, and so I always get a little bit nervous.
I do think there is a case that just like getting Brandon Ingram is better. Honestly, like I think there's like a completely real case.
Well,
there.
So the case
but that's your move. If you do Brandon Ingram, like, yes, it's probably a better team, but if he sucks or continues to do what he did this year, like, that's your move because you have to pay him, and it's going to be way harder to get off of that deal when you have a lot of money invested in him than what it is like right now.
I think with BI, do you think he can be the true number 2 guy behind Donovan Mitchell offensively? If you don't think he's like a real number 2, if he's just going to be a number 3, then I think surrounding Mitchell with a bunch of different guys makes more sense. But if you tell me like BI is going to come in, he's going to be the number 2 guy, like, all of that, then yeah, I think there's a case and an argument for that.
He's definitely way better than Kyle Kuzma, right?
Yes. Way better. Definitely better.
He's definitely better. Like, he's definitely, like, I'm not saying that Brandon Ingram isn't better than Kyle Kuzma. He is. How big of a difference is it? Would be my question. I'm like really not totally sure how much of a difference it is.
No, that's the question, right? Because if BI is a 2, it could be your number 2 option, and Kuzma's like a 4th option, that's a real difference. Like, that's gigantic. If BI is like a 3rd option and Kuzma's a high end 4, now we're just talking like definitely better, but like, is it that much when you consider the other things you could have?
Kuzma also will be making $19 million in 2026-27.
Yeah.
And Brandon Ingram's going to be up over 40 at that point.
I mean, yeah.
Are we certain that Brandon Ingram has more trade value than Kyle Kuzma?
That's not what you asked me a second ago.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I know.
Again, I feel like a Brandon Ingram hater, but when I have to factor in, I may be paying him $40 to $50 million after next year, I sour very quickly, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't hate the way we just remade Cleveland, and it on like the paper, it looks fucking terrible. But I think the way that we did it like is interesting to me. A few other things to talk about here. Isaac Okoro, restricted free agent, has been like a slow, steady growth process for Isaac Okoro, but he's an awesome on-ball defender. He's become a better off-ball defender. He made 49% of his shots, 39% from 3, 70% from the line this year. Last 3 years combined, he's been up over 35 each year from 3, 37% total this year, made 39 on 3 attempts per game from 3. I think he's getting like $18 to $20 million in restricted free agency from somebody.
Yeah, 40% from corner threes this year, Wasn't as good in the playoffs with his 3-point shooting in their 12 games. He was down at 26%. But yeah, I think he's a good player. It'll be interesting to see on this market what a team will throw at him.
It's so like here's the thing going against Okoro is like the market is always a bit cheaper for restricted free agents.
Yep.
But we know the money is locked in now for the TV deal. I think some deals are going to get like pretty wild this year, even with like the gradual smoothing of the cap kind of happening. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting situation to me is Okoro, because you could sell me on him just getting like the mid-level, 4 years, 56 million or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you could sell me on like, it's 18. Maybe it's 18 for 3 years. Maybe it's like 3 years, 54. I guess that would be right.
Yeah, I wonder where he would actually get an offer. Like who's the team that throws the money at him, and wonder if Cleveland, kind of like with the Austin Reeves situation, it gets an advantage. Stop. I know. No, you're right. But if they get lucky that no team throws him a bag.
Yeah. Just saying. There is
saying.
a team there that has a bag of money to throw at young wings who can defend.
They do have a bag to throw. See what Trajan Langdon does.
Yeah, look, like I think that the Cavs are in an interesting spot that could go like a number of different ways. Is kind of where I'm at this summer. And we didn't even talk about what if Donovan Mitchell doesn't resign, right? If he doesn't resign, like it's just simple, like he's getting traded.
Yes.
Right.
And then you build around Darius Garland and go from there.
Yeah. If Donovan Mitchell has to be traded, like at that point, I'm really interested to see what they do. Do you build around Garland, Allen, and Mobley, or do you still move Allen because you don't love the fit with Mobley? Even though Garland's fit is so incredible with Allen, particularly. So to maximize Allen or maximize Garland as your guy, you want to keep Allen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It makes it. This team is so fascinating because again, I like all 4 of these players quite a bit. And it would be amazing if they all work together, and it just doesn't seem like they do. So the combinations are interesting.
And quickly, just like teams for Mitchell, I would imagine the Knicks would try and get involved. I would imagine that Brooklyn would try and get involved. I would imagine Houston would try and get involved. I think the Lakers would undoubtedly make an attempt. I just don't think they have the assets to top Houston or one of these New York teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those are the teams that like really track to me as potential Mitchell spots.